We heard, we're now going back to the reading from Kings with Elijah, and also we're looking at, once again, Matthew's Gospel, continuing with what we call the antithesis, the Jesus taking, you've heard in the Old Testament, but I say this to you, Jesus fulfilling, making the actual meaning of the Old Testament come to life, the true meaning, its depth. On Tuesday, we heard about the great victory that Elijah wrought on Mount Carmel, and how it was clear that the Lord is God as the Lord sent down fire to burn up the offerings. And at that stage, 450 of the prophets of Baal were all killed by the people as they proclaimed that the Lord is God. And great victory as it was, everything turned immediately round for the worse as Jezebel, King Ahab's wife, then threatened to kill Elijah. The Lord do this to me and that if I don't see you dead by tomorrow. She makes a threat. You're dead, basically, for killing my prophets. And he runs off. And so we find Elijah now on the mountain of God, running for his life. And he's come into this cave, and the Lord appears before him. But the Lord is not in the mighty wind. The Lord is not in the fire. He's not in the earthquake. The Lord is in the gentle breeze. And it's in that silence that Elijah hears the voice of God. Why are you here, Elijah? I'm filled with zeal for the house of the Lord, because the sons of Israel have deserted you, broken down your altars and put your prophets to the sword. I'm the only one left, and they want to kill me. This text actually relates to our gospel. The gospel about adultery. And Jesus bringing to fulfillment, making plain, bringing the true depths of the Old Testament law about adultery to us as Christians. The people of Israel in the Old Testament there had abandoned. The sons of Israel have deserted you, says Elijah. They've committed adultery. They have gone after other gods. They've entered into relationships with other gods. In the gospel itself, the adultery is to do with human physical relations. And as with yesterday's reading, and it was murder beginning in the heart, so too here Jesus makes plain that adultery begins in the heart and with a lustful look. And he gives a very stark, brutal remedy to this sin. The anger is dealt with forgiveness, reconciliation. But the lustful look, Jesus says, if your eye causes you to sin, and it's the lustful look, when we start looking at someone in a lustful way, he says, if it causes you to sin, tear it out. That is extreme. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Now, Jesus isn't speaking literally here. He's speaking metaphorically. He wants us to show how serious this is for our souls, for the soul of the other person, how it can damage a family, destroy a family. And so extreme remedies are needed. If your right hand causes you to sin. These days, what do we often find if you're right-handed? What do you often find in your right hand? Go on. What do you nearly always find if you're left-handed, it's always in your left hand, of course. It's your mobile phone, So, certainly, I used to find my mobile phone in my hand all the time, and it was too much stuff. So eventually I had to put it to one side. And, it took me a while to be able to do that because, boy, it was part of me, And sometimes the mobile phone or the computer can be part of us, and it can cause us to sin. It can be an occasion of sin. We can find stuff on that, and I'm speaking specifically here, pornography, that's where the adultery begins. And we have to look at how we can cut ourselves off from that. And sometimes that can be painful, like getting rid of your phone, putting apps or whatever it is onto your computers to make sure that you can't access these things, being very practical. But we have to do something practical. It begins in the heart, but comes through the eye. And so even during the day, we can be walking down the street and see somebody really good looking, great figure. And we might want to look and follow. And then as we're looking and following, our imaginations start to do things that maybe perhaps our imaginations shouldn't do. There's an ancient custom of the church called custody of the eyes. You know, when somebody is taken into custody, it's usually the police who take somebody into custody. You know, you've been misbehaving, so they take you and take you where you'd rather not go. And we have to do that with our eyes. If our eyes misbehave, we've got to take them into custody and take them in the direction they should be going. And that means we might notice the person, but we don't look. You know, they can be right up close in front, but I'm not looking at that. I'm looking maybe at their eyes, their face. I'm controlling where I look. And we need to be able to do this. Sometimes it's relationships. Sometimes there are people in our lives that are like our right hand or our right eye that are bad for us, that will lead us into sin. And there are times when we need to cut ourselves off from them. Better to cut ourselves off from that relationship than end up in hell, says Jesus. So we're challenged today. There's more we could speak about. I'm going to leave it at that, though. The challenge is, you know, what am I holding in my right hand, and is it causing me to sin? What do I need to do to take custody of my eyes and to prevent myself from entering into sins? What relationships do I need to look at again? This what Jesus is teaching us here is going to the heart of the disciple, a follower of Jesus Christ, one who is not ruled by bitterness and anger from yesterday, and one who is not ruled by lust, who lives in purity of heart, imitating the heart of Jesus.